Mikhail Ivanovich Kalinin is one of the most famous Soviet figures. Nominally from 1919, the revolutionary was the head of state. Only good things were told about the Bolshevik in those days, and a lot of information was withheld that could discredit the party and Kalinin himself. In most photographs and portraits, the revolutionary looks like a nice old man with a neat beard who cared about his country. Streets, squares, and even an entire city is named after him. But not everything was so smooth. Kalinin and the Bolshoi theater. Girls of creative professions have always been of interest to status men. Even in the Soviet Union it was no exception. Many party leaders had mistresses. This was not talked about publicly, the information was carefully hidden. Vera Davidova, who calls herself Stalin's mistress, told after his death that the leader had several women. Beria had mistresses, Kalinin was no exception. He loved ballerinas and often wooed them. When the Soviet party figure became chairman of the All-Russian Central Executive Committee, he informally also looked after many theaters in the capital. But more often than not, Kalinin was at the Bolshoi theater. He constantly watched rehearsals before high-ranking Soviet dignitaries moved there. Girls did not refuse signs of attention, Davidova wrote. Mikhail Kalinin constantly gave them chocolates, lingerie, invited them to dinner at expensive restaurants. Ballerinas always agreed to keep him company and allowed little pranks in the form of small kisses. But it did not stop there. After Kalinin's death it became known that he had a lot of very young girls at home. In fact, in the residence of the Bolshevik was a harem. Stalin once shared a secret. Kalinin offered to take a 16-year-old girl on a tour with her, brought her to his home and abused her, wrote Davidova, a favorite of the country's leader, in her book. History is silent as to how many more such cases there were. Later it turned out that it was a relative of Marshal Yegorov. In 1939 he was mysteriously arrested and immediately shot. Joseph Stalin was shocked by Kalinin's behavior, but because of the situation in the country he decided not to repress him. Mysterious death. Bella Yuvarova was a very talented ballerina and regularly appeared on the Bolshoi theater stage. But one day the young girl disappeared. Her parents began to look for her and turned to law enforcement agencies. Some time later, Yuvarova's body was found. It is believed that Kalinin wanted to meet the ballerina, but the girl was brave and decided to refuse him. The case was never investigated, and Yuvarova's parents were arrested a few days later. They were declared enemies of nations and imprisoned for espionage. There is no mention of the ballerina in historical documents, but many girls told that high-ranking officials were rarely refused. The dancers feared for their lives and the safety of their kin. The Chekists also contributed to what was going on behind the walls of the party dachas. They collected dirt on everyone and often used such methods. Officials were regularly sent girls and compromat was written down in everyone's personal file. It is not known how often the secret services used this information to get those caught doing the right thing, putting his own spouse in jail. Kalinin first met his wife in 1905, they married immediately, and 3 years later the couple had a son and then 2 more daughters. But Kalinin was not a decent family man and constantly cheated on Catherine Lorberg. In 1919, after the Bolshevik victory, the family had a housekeeper in their new home. Literally immediately Kalinin began to pester the woman, they began an affair, and it all happened in front of his wife. She could not stand it and left for a while to visit her parents with their children. When Lorberg returned, the housekeeper had disappeared. The cheating continued for 20 years, and then suddenly someone wrote a denunciation about Kalinin's wife. The woman was sent to the camps for 15 years, declared a Trotskyist. At the trial, Mikhail Ivanovich did not even stand up for Catherine. He forbade his children to write to their mother. Only his youngest daughter disobeyed him and regularly sent letters to the prison. In 1945 Stalin personally ordered that Kalinin's wife be set free. Katerina spent 7 years behind bars. In 1953 she was rehabilitated, recognizing the court's decision to be wrong. That's how easily at someone's when people's fates were broken. Whether this is all true or fiction is for everyone to decide, but there is no such thing as gossip with precedent.